Welcome to the presentation for the Design Commercial Project. I'm James Knight. I'm the project manager with the City of Nanaimo, and I'm going to introduce you to Ian Lockwood, who is going to, and Tyler Golly from Toole Design, who are going to give the presentation. And due to time constraints, we're not going to have a question and answer period at the end. However, if you'd like to provide any feedback or comments about what you see tonight, please do email me at designcommercial@nanaimo.ca. And I hope you enjoy the presentation.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ian Lockwood, and I'm with Toole Design Group, and I'll be doing the presentation tonight. I'm happy to be on Tyler's computer. That's why it says Tyler on it. So I'll do a little intro, and I'll go into some background, and then we'll get into some design theory, and then show how that's applied to your city and to your plazas. So first of all, we didn't start from scratch. You guys have been doing a lot of work with your planning about being green, healthy, connected, empowered, and enabled. And so we translated that into a vision of a green, connected, equitable place that reflects the history of the city while attracting people, investment, and vitality. And I think that theme has resonated through all of our meetings with stakeholders, with the public, with the staff, and with the city council. So this process was divided into two parts. There was a discovery part where lots of people came in and drew on our maps. We met with stakeholders, we walked the corridor, we had tours with various people of the corridor, and we learned a lot about the place. And then we came back this week, and we have developed from our starter ideas to some concepts to share with you tonight. And this is called the Design Week. These are some students that came in and helped us. We had a whole variety of people who came in and shared ideas. These are some of the things we heard, and depending on the size of the word, that's what we heard more and more. So the bigger the letters, the more we heard it. So basically, what people really like is the diverse local businesses, the history, the walkability of the whole place, the proximity to the waterfront. And the things that they'd like to see improved is a better pedestrian environment, a more vibrant place. There's some social issues with people experiencing homelessness, how to deal with those issues as well. A nicer street, flexibility, easy maintenance, better cycling environments, connections to the waterfront, these sorts of things. So very pro-city ideas came through the public process. I just want to go over a little bit of history of ground transportation. And about 5 million years ago, people started walking upright, and about 6,500 years ago, cities were invented. And that means streets were invented. So streets have been around a long time, and folks just walked on them for ages. And only about 5,000 years ago did we domesticate horses. And eventually we invented transit about 400 years ago, and then more recently bicycles. And then when we got steel technology down, we could build rail-based trains and trolleys. And the new kid on the block is the automobile. It's only been around just over 100 years, and it's only been popular for about 85 years or so. And so up to that point in time, streets were about socializing, celebrating, recreation, commerce, travel, and communication. Those were the roles of the streets, and drainage. Those are the roles of the street. And they were truly public spaces for literally thousands of years. And so if you look at the old paintings, you'll see that reflected in those paintings. And even in North America, the streets were like that. There were no such thing as crosswalks, signals. You could walk anywhere you wanted. And today we call those sorts of streets shared spaces. But back then they were called streets. So the idea of streets has evolved from the sort of shared space idea to what we know of streets today, where the cars kind of dominate the middle of the street, and cyclists and pedestrians are are pushed to the edges and have to cross at intersections. So that's a very new idea in cities. So this happened all over North America. You can see the people walking anywhere they wanted. And then around 1930s, there was a big struggle between who gets to use the street and how it gets used. And there were folks who were very passionate on both sides about how dangerous cars were, and then the folks who are using the cars said they're so convenient and fast. Anyway, the motorists won, and our streets have become very automobile oriented. And this is a project that we did in Atlanta, Georgia. So we don't do just work in Canada, we do work all over North America. And this is their main street. And they expanded the street to 4 lanes. And it was so hostile that they ended up building these barricades and so forth to prevent pedestrians from accessing the street. And so that street's going to get changed into a flush environment where there's no curbs, 2 lanes, and a lot slower. And it's going to restore what we call the original intent of the main street, a place of social and economic exchange where all different user groups can use the space equitably. So some streets have survived in their more or less original form with their original intent. And this is now what we call a shared space. This was what all streets were like, where people just walked anywhere they wanted. And the reason we have curbs and sidewalks was to do with drainage, keeping people's feet out of the mud and the horse manure and all the rest of the stuff that was in the street and the water. But this shared space, you can walk on it, you can park on it, you can drive on it, you can ride your bike on it, and it's a really nice place for exchange. This is a more contemporary version of that. This is Exhibition Road in London. It carries about 15,000 cars a day. It's where all the not all of them, but a lot of the museums in London are located on this street. And it was conventionally designed, but they replaced that design with this shared space idea. And you can see the edges are dominated by people, and people cross where they like. So this street is busier in terms of car use than probably any street in Nanaimo, except perhaps Terminal and the bypass. And it's a great place for social and economic exchange. It's a wonderful street, very safe. And there's literally no curbs along the sides of the street. This is an intersection which has been altered to kind of blur the lines between the sidewalks and the street. And when this is closed to motorists, it becomes a plaza where you can have a celebration parade, whatever you want, with no one tripping or anything like that. This is a shared space in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and you can drive on it, you can walk on it, you can ride your bike on it, but it's a really slow, successful street for shopping and that kind of thing. This is on a university campus, and this used to be a conventional street, and we redesigned it so that students with mobility impairments, like that fellow in the lower drawing, can get around. Like previously, you had to go to the whole end of the block just to cross the street. And when they shut this street for their festivals and sports celebrations and so on, he can't participate properly. And with it and its configuration at the top, if you have a mobility impairment and you get dropped off by somebody, you can park anywhere, you can get out, you can get in your car, whether you're in a wheelchair or you just have a hip issue, or if you're pushing a baby carriage or you're towing luggage. It's just an easier street to navigate. This is a street we designed in the city of Orlando down in Florida, right in front of their basketball arena. And this is just a typical day. It just operates as an ordinary street. It's called Church Street. But if we want to, we can, if you're doing an event tonight, you can turn it into a plaza and it becomes a really beautiful space. And there's no curbs on it either. So it's called a flush street. And so you can have wine and cheeses, you can have pre-function events for the stadium. All kinds of things can happen in the street. It's a true public space. And this place became so popular that they tore down that parking garage. And so today, if you go there, it's gone. And the city's building an entertainment area. So when the stadium went in, having parking nearby was really important. But this place is so popular now that it's considered a waste of space just to store cars so close to such an important space. So it's becoming a place of more exchange now. And in the day, this street is used for all sorts of things as well. So highly successful street. So the idea is, what can we do with Commercial Street? And you can see the lanes are very wide and consequently the sidewalks are small. So some of the very important things that help streets be more successful for businesses is wider sidewalks, street trees, and two-way travel. Those are probably the three top things that make successful main streets. And the idea is to turn it into a really nice place where people want to spend time and want to be. So these are the sorts of things that we consider while making really nice downtowns. We want to connect it to the neighborhoods around, connect it to the waterfront. We want it to be convenient. What we mean by that is, do we have the mix of land uses so you don't have to go that far to get what you want? Like if you live downtown, can you get food? Can you get entertainment? All these sorts of things. Jobs. We want it to be comfortable in terms of things like wind and awnings for rain, but also feeling safe personally. And that's done through things like natural surveillance, where there's lots of eyes on the street, and it keeps it safe and feeling safe. We want it to be engaging. We want the streets to hold people's attention so they're willing to walk and enjoy it. So we want the facades to change along the way. So people will walk further. They park once and then they don't feel like they need to drive to every different destination. We want it to be accessible for all different types of people. We want it legible so you know where you are. You know how to find your way around. So it's sort of intuitively navigable. And we want it to be safe through best practices, equitable, including all different types of people, and flexible. You know, you want to do parades, you want to do festivals, you want to do events. And so we want the space to be able to accommodate all those different sorts of things. So I'd like to discuss this idea of A streets and B streets. And A streets are the sorts of streets where they're lined with buildings. And they look something like this, where there's no interruptions by driveways or parking lots. And so when you're walking along, the facades change every like 8 to 10 seconds. And we call it the 8-second rule. And if you design streets like this, people will walk a long distance and enjoy it and shop more and spend more time in your downtown. And then we have B streets, and they are usually every other street. And this is where you have access to back of house functions like parking, servicing, loading, dumpsters, all that kind of thing. You don't want those on your A streets because it damages the experience, the walking experience. So we organize our streets into A and B streets. And when you're investing money into your downtown, if you want to attract people investment, it's really good to try and keep this discipline and this rigor about where to invest your money, to place the B places where they need to be and the A places on the A streets. And then around your public spaces, it's usually a good idea to have a street to ensure that the public space stays public, and also to create a concept of refuge, which I'll go into in a moment, where you have natural surveillance from the edges into the open space. This is the framework plan that we developed early this week. And the big green squares along Front Street are the three places that you can cross from the core of the downtown to the waterfront. You can see the dotted line along the waterfront. That's your A frontages along the waterfront. And what we want to do is, on those purple lines, pull people in A environments to Commercial Street. And if you kind of squint, you can kind of see a figure 8 on the right hand side on its side. You have these two loops, you know, museum to commercial down to Bastion and down front. And then the second part of the figure 8 is Bastion down church and then along front as well. So you have these two loops. And then you have some appendages that go for example, to the south down to Victoria, up Chapel, and up Bastion towards the older part of the city. So those are the A streets, and then we have two key squares. We got Dallas Square on the north end and Diana Krall Square kind of in the middle. The little asterisks are entryways, so we want to let people know that, hey, there's a downtown here, this is Commercial Street, maybe you want to visit here and go shopping or have a bite to eat. Because right now, for example, if you're on Terminal Avenue, you can go by here and you don't even know you just went past Commercial. So we want to accentuate those sort of entry points into the downtown, whether you're going up Commercial or up to Victoria. Now, ideally, we would have those really nice walking environments along the sides of all of these A streets and really have a nice, comfortable, observed walking environment down to the water and all around the downtown. But there are gaps because of loading areas, parking lots, blank walls, and so forth. And we call those the missing teeth of those A frontages. And we really want to fill in as many of those as we can and get a really nice a set of A streets where that walking environment is not interrupted. Now, there are folks who would like to create A environments and walking environments down Wharf and across the top of the parking garage, between Diana Krall Square and Front. And that's great. Those are great ideas, but probably not the highest priority at the moment. You have 2.2 kilometers of frontage that needs to be sewn together without those missing teeth. The red lines, that adds up to 2.2 kilometers. And the blue lines add another 500 meters of frontage. And you're probably better off in the near and middle terms to invest in making those frontages that you already have on your A streets really good, as opposed to trying to create new energy on other streets. Because Nanaimo is only a certain size, and it's really difficult to animate and get energy on so many meters of street. So maybe years from now, you could entertain expanding your A environments down some of these corridors. So don't preclude them, but your highest priority ought to be on those red streets for the next while. So that's the framework plan. And then if you zoom in a little bit into the Diana Krall Plaza area, the purple lines are those A frontages, and you can see that we've tried to fill in a few spots. Like if this building on Front were to expand, you could fill in this missing tooth here. If you're going down Museum Way, we've got this nice hotel coming in, which will have a nice sidewalk in front, but you've got a very unfriendly walk along the bluff, but that could be a wonderful walk along that sort of natural feature and getting you down to the waterfront. So start filling in those things, and then past the theater, we got some loading areas and some places that don't feel exactly friendly. And perhaps if the theater to expand, we could get an A frontage along there. So that's the kind of ideas to start getting this this walk to be really friendly. So Commercial Street, what should we do to the street? And so our conclusion is we would do something like this, where we would widen the sidewalks, probably texture the street to keep the speeds down a little bit, enclose the street so it doesn't feel so cavernous and wide, with some street trees, and parking on both sides. In this concept, the lowest part of the street is this valley gutter between the parking row and the street, and that conveys the water, and they can go into rain gardens or what have you. And this creates a very flexible street, so you can just use it like a regular street on a regular day and park on the sides. You can use a couple of the parking spaces for dining if you like. Put a couple planters out by the valley gutter. Right now you have a wooden dining area out in the street, and you could with this flexible design, you could have parking, up to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and then change it into dining if you wanted. Or if you wanted to, you could have more dining spaces over the weekend. If you wanted to do a festival, you could put your tents up along the street, and it doesn't matter that they have to be off the sidewalk or on the sidewalk, because with a flush street, you can put the tents anywhere, and you're not limited by the curb. And when people are using the street, they're not tripping up or down curbs, and folks with mobility challenges, they don't have to go to the end of the block to get up to the sidewalk. So it gives you a whole lot of flexibility. Also, these parking spaces could be used for loading zones. Maybe it's a loading zone up to 10 o'clock in the morning, then it reverts to parking. So you can change the use of the edge. We need to stop thinking of it just as a parking row, but as a kind of a flex zone that you can use for parking, you can use for loading, you can change the times, you can use it for dining, you can use it for celebrations, you can use it for all sorts of things. Pick up, drop off for Ubers and Lyfts. So it gives you a great deal of flexibility on the edge when it's being used as a street, or when it's being used as used flexibly for your different events. It's also good for maintenance because it's easier to plow the street without all the curbs. It's easier for street sweeping. The grit and trash and so forth migrates to the valley gutter, where it can get picked up easier, as opposed to being hidden behind parked cars. Just simply less tripping hazards. It's fire truck friendly. Child literacy goes up about 50%. Teenage pregnancy drops. Peace goes all across the world. So it has a lot of good advantages with the flush design. So we applied that to the whole corridor. And so starting at the south end, you can see Victoria at the bottom of your screen, and Wallace at the top, and Albert to the left. And so what we've done is we've turned one giant ambiguous intersection into two T intersections. So it makes them more intimate and more pedestrian friendly. We can get more space for dining. It allows the streets to stay two-way. And so you get complete connectivity for all modes of transportation between, for example, Victoria Crescent and the balance of Commercial Street. Keeps things slow. And you'll notice at the ends of these intersections, you see these sort of brick areas. Those are ramps. And so it goes up from a regular street level up to sidewalk height. And so this area is raised. And that it changes the dynamic between the motorists and the pedestrians, because the pedestrians don't have to go down to car level. The cars have to come up to pedestrian level, and it kind of literally levels the playing field a little bit, giving pedestrians more prominence, more comfort. You don't have to negotiate ramps down and up in the wintertime. It just creates a safer, more inclusive space. And you can see some placeholders for dining and so forth as this area redevelops. And we've got a great view line coming down Commercial Street, and we've suggested a kind of an area here where we could perhaps work with the First Nations folks and perhaps have a totem pole or two with a nice backdrop, because that's something tall, something that you could see all the way down the street. So we'd like to work on that and see if that's feasible. We think that would be a great vista. And we can do other art in the sidewalks or on the sides in any manner we want. You can see the street trees to get that sense of enclosure. And this is Commercial Crossing Terminal. And you can see these ramps here as well. Now this is a busy road, and it's got trucks and all sorts of things running along it. So the ramp would need to be elongated so it doesn't upset the loads and the trucks. But the point is that it's an optical change. The fact that it's a ramp, but it's a long ramp, you probably won't notice it as you drive over, but you will notice it visually. And that lets everyone know that Commercial is here. And perhaps someday they should come back, or that day go have their lunch or something on Commercial. So it makes a nice prominent crossing. It also makes drivers aware that probably pedestrians are going to be crossing here. So we think that's a good thing. So working north from there, just north of Terminal, this building has been set back. You can see the width of the right-of-way was smaller, but it's been set back here. And unfortunately, the sidewalk area got filled in with some really large planters. And we think it would be better for the businesses if we made the sidewalk area more business friendly. So we have seating for the businesses, and it would probably create activity and natural surveillance there that would make this more comfortable for everybody, because we've established a territory here that belongs to the businesses, and so make the walking environment nicer. You can see the valley gutters on each side, and these parking rows or flex zones along the sides, just like we showed you in this section. This is Museum Way, which would stay more or less in its current configuration, and we would probably address the intersection more with an apron rather than because it's a pretty quiet small street, so we'd want to reinforce that with the design. You'll notice that all of the crosswalks have bulb outs everywhere, because we want to minimize the crossing distance and allow pedestrians to stand in the bulb out so they can be in a safe place and look to the left and right, and have their exposure be less. So that's what Commercial Street looks like in that vicinity. Now we're going to skip across Diana Krall Plaza and come back to that after. We're just going to stick to the street for a moment. So now we're past Diana Krall Plaza, and we're up to Bastion Street, and we've got this wonderful these rainbow crosswalks, and that was kind of retrofitted in. And maybe if we're going to rethink this, because we're thinking about removing the turn lane, tightening it up to help pedestrians cross the street, make folks expect pedestrians. Because Commercial Street is a flush street, we have those ramps that we showed you down by Terminal, and so to be very obvious to folks that this is a special street that they might want to visit at some time. And we thought we would experiment with the idea of a much bolder rainbow. There's a plaque on the wall commemorating the person who this was done in the memory of, and we were thinking that maybe we could give it a little obelisk or something and have the rainbow radiate out from that plaque and inform the whole intersection. I think we thought that would be, since we're redoing the street, that would be an appropriate thing to do. So this is our idea for that rainbow intersection. And then Commercial kind of turns around Church Street. We're trying to de-emphasize the role of Chapel, since it's a one-way street, so folks don't speed up and down if they go slowly. We're also trying to unclutter the front of this beautiful building with the columns, so that folks can take really nice photographs, and when they're eating and dining out here, it's a really dignified area, sort of in the same sort of quality of the architecture of the building. We want that sort of same feeling for the street. And as we go further down, the parking starts again, because it's a lot of businesses down there. And then a couple other, and then this Church Street goes past the Dallas Plaza, and we'll show you that in a moment as well. So those are the streets, and we're going to take a look at some of the side streets. One I'm going to mention right now, though, is Bastion. So on Bastion Street by the hotel, we have a slightly wider flex area, so you can pick up, drop off people, and you can open doors on both sides easily. A bus can pull in here. We have parking on the other side of the street, on-street parking, again, flex space. And then where the street gets tight, what we're suggesting is a wider sidewalk on the south side, because that allows you to walk from the waterfront all the way up to the old part of the city, and then most of it's to the west. And so it makes a really strong connection between the old area and Commercial Street. So this is Wharf Street. This is mostly sort of a back of house B street. It goes underneath the building and access an arts area and ends up by Diana Krall Plaza. We have two ideas for this. One is a somewhat like that picture we showed you in Italy, where it's just paved from building face to building face, and you park next to the building, and it's so lightly traveled that you would just walk in the street itself. So that was one idea. And the second idea, oh, this is what it looks like. So it's parking next to the street, and it's an inverted crown street, so it drains to the middle. And then another idea is to have street trees down the sides, and it's so in this case it's a much more attractive street because of the sense of enclosure and so forth for the trees. However, the street would, for operational reasons, would need to end at the parking garage. Now you'll see in a moment that we're preventing motorists from accessing the west end of Wharf Street, because we want to expand the plaza at its main level all the way to this Flatiron building. And you'll see why that's important in a moment. So we have two options for this street. One is where you can come and drive on it and park on it, and one is where you can drive up to the garage with the street trees. And this is what that looks like. So it has little sidewalks, parking up till you get to the garage, and then it becomes more of a pedestrian street after that. This is Skinner Street, which is just west of Commercial, and it's a one-way street. And it's really getting a kind of an arts vibe, and we're trying to reflect that idea into the street. So we've proposed this be a flush street. The arts community would like to start doing in-street murals. We think that you know, perhaps they could do artistic kind of catenary lighting over it, and let these this public realm be kind of a canvas for expression for this arts area. We think that would be really cool in the vicinity of Diana Krall Plaza. So it's kind of narrow, so we're proposing trees on one side, and because of the way the water works, we're draining it to one side, and that will help, you know, irrigate the trees and also help reduce the impervious surfaces. So this is what it could look like. So you got one lane. This street is also capable of being shut to motorists and become a place for celebration or expression of the businesses on the outside along the street. And down further, closer to Commercial Street, the trees would shift to the other side, and you could have rain gardens, that kind of thing, in the street environment. So these are the two options. These are just some precedent images. On one, you can pave the whole thing, have parking on the sides, and you walk and bike and drive down the middle. The other one is more pedestrian oriented, and it would have trees, something like this. Skinner Street could oh, sorry. Skinner Street could be, I just mixed things up here. We just put this presentation together. So this is the example of Wharf Street, sorry. So Wharf Street could be paved right across, or it could be treed like that. And then about the plazas, we have two plazas we're designing, and there's some principles that go into the plazas. And a really important one is prospect and refuge, and we'll go over that in a minute. We've talked about A and B. Things to do, views, themes, softening places so people want to spend time there, a sense of enclosure and flexibility. These are the kinds of things we want to maximize in our squares. So here are two squares or parks. They're about the same size with the same programming. One has public edges on streets, and the other one is enclosed by buildings. It's private, so a back of house kind of area. And the idea is, the question is, which is better for the city? One that's enclosed by the backs of buildings, or one that's overseen by frontages across the street? And the answer is A is better for the city, because the value of the public space radiates down the streets, and you have the natural surveillance. This is kind of creepy, back of house kind of thing, because the fronts face away, and this is where your kids learn how to smoke. You know, in these these corners where nobody's looking. So how this applies to the squares is, here's a little square, and this is the prospect, or so this is the refuge on the side. This is where people feel comfortable in the refuge, and this is this prospect where they look out. So people feel comfortable with their backs to things where they look out over the open areas. Here's a few students, and they're sitting beside a copse of trees, looking out at the prospect. Here's a couple of streets, and you can see these folks on the right, on the bottom image. They're in the refuge, looking out, enjoying these folks walking by, all the activity on the street. So that's the refuge, and the prospect is the activity on the street. Similarly, on the right-hand drawing, you can see the tables in the background, the bench. So that's the refuge, and the prospect is the activity in the street. Here's a square. You got the prospect in the middle of the square, and you've got lots of places to sit comfortably, like this gentleman on the left, to observe the square from a feeling of safety. In the corner, this is a little splash pad. Here's the kids of all ages enjoying the splash pad. And there's this prospect. So there's the grandmother watching her grandchildren from her refuge, and she feels very comfortable there. So that's the idea. So here's one of our open spaces. This is Dallas Plaza on the the north end of the corridor. What we're proposing here is to help through design the businesses kind of occupy the edges of the plaza. There's 2 restaurants, but this is a blank wall, so we'd like to allow them to create eyes and natural surveillance on each end of the square. We'd like to move the memorial so that it looks out at the view instead of straight into the concrete thing. So this is a much nicer orientation in our view, and we could rearrange the accessible access down by the restaurant, and then along the west edge of the square. We're also proposing some seating, some public seating areas, again in line with the cool view, terracing the landscape down from Front Street, and creating a bit of a reflecting pool. And this pool is about 3 millimeters deep, and the water just goes slowly across this and then ripples down this edge. We have a couple other concepts that we didn't finish drawing with stepping stones and things to make it a nice place to be on a summer day, and then for Remembrance Day, it turns into a somber place for reflection for all the soldiers from the past and those who are serving today. We have reorganized the street so that it opens up further to the south, so that when you're coming up the street, you have a nice view as you look across the street. And then when you cross the street, you're crossing into an easier place to get down to the waterfront. Now we're going to move on to Diana Krall Plaza, and I just want to show you some sort of precedent ideas that you're going to see reflected in the plaza. So on the bottom is from the movie Big with Tom Hanks, and in the toy store, there was this piano built into the floor, and when you step on the keys, a note sounds, and these 2 actors are playing a tune on the piano by stepping on the keys. This staircase is in Brussels, and everyone was using the escalator, and the city wanted people to exercise more. So they turned the steps into piano keys. And so as you walk up, it plays the piano, goes ding, 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 ding. And so people have a lot of fun walking up and down those stairs, and they get more exercise. Another thing we'd like to think about for the plaza is dancing. And so embedded in the surface material, we could teach people how to do the rumba, the mambo, the triple swing, the tango, all sorts of dances you can do and learn in the plaza. Now this is a picture of the plaza, and there was a piano that was in it before, and we would like to return a piano to the plaza at some point because Diana Krall is a very good pianist. Kids love boulders. You're going to see this in the Plaza design. They come up with all kinds of creative ways to sit on them and hide in them and have fun on them. And of course, celebrating the artist herself would be an ideal thing in her plaza. So this is what the plaza looks like right now. And on the east side, we've got this blank wall. This is the most prominent part of the plaza, this blank wall that sticks into the plaza. There's some windows on the other side with Venetian blinds. So this is not the sort of engaging edge that we want. This is the doors to the library and the doors to the garage. And then the plaza pinches here like an hourglass, and then it gets into kind of a back of house area off to the east behind the theater. And we think it would be a good idea to, for the time being, for the next several years, to end the plaza where my cursor is. And because this is the part of the plaza that has the most potential to be active, you would have to invest a lot of effort to create a dynamic place to the east here, and your money and effort would be better spent on activating your existing A frontages down Commercial, Victoria, and other streets, Bastion Street, and so on. So I'm suggesting that you reinforce your A environments that you already have before you start creating new ones, which would compete with your existing ones. So, and then we have the bank on the other side. This is Wharf Street coming up kind of from a lower elevation. So this is lowered down. The active space on the east side of the square is just in front of this Flatiron building. There's a few tables and so on that are lowered down. So it's not a very inviting space to the east. Now on the west side, it's much more inviting because you've got some restaurants and a bakery. So this is the area that we're suggesting to be the plaza. And what we're suggesting is to elevate this part of the plaza and create the connection to the street here in this green area for people who are using wheelchairs. And that's how we would start the shared space further down the street. This is one of the few places in the square where you can actually see down to the waterfront. You can see the boats. And this creates a nice place for putting tables on both sides of this ramp that oversee the street and look all the way down. Similarly, we have a really nice view coming up the street, to this handsome building on the far side of the plaza. These are the doors to existing buildings and to some proposed openings that we're going to show you in a moment. What we'd like to do is in the bank, there's a set of columns. If you go inside the bank, from those columns to the windows, we would like to put in some kind of sandwich shop or a restaurant or something like that, and move their door from the side here to the front where it's more visible. Then over here where the yellow is, put an ice cream shop or something there with some architectural embellishment, something exciting that you can see from the street, and it would say, oh, maybe I want to go down there. Because today it feels kind of odd walking there because there's no such natural surveillance. But if we redesigned it, it would be an inviting place to go. And then maybe another restaurant here. This is sort of a processing area in the library, and maybe we could turn that into some kind of retail shop or restaurant or something. And that would pull people into the space. And then we would suggest some awnings to make a comfortable edge for seating under. Where we can plant trees, a lot of this is above a garage, so we can't plant trees, but where we can plant trees, we would suggest we would do that to create a sense of enclosure and beauty and comfort. If you look closely, you can see in the plaza, we have the lanes implied, and you'll notice that we've pushed the street a little to the east to create more space on the sidewalks on the west, so that we can have more tables and so forth for the restaurants. And so what the tables would look like. The ones against the buildings are intended to be used by the restaurant owners adjacent to them, and the 4-seat tables out would be available to anybody. So you could buy your lunch at one of the other restaurants and come up here and eat it in the plaza. This is a piano that we would suggest building it flush into the paving. And these keys, there's 55 white keys on a grand piano, and they would be about 30 centimeters wide. And when you step on them, it would make a note. And if you stepped on two, it would make a chord. And so you can imagine, so this is 30 centimeters, about a foot. So this is about 55 feet of piano. And you can imagine a group of budding musicians coming here and trying to play a tune together. It'd be a lot of fun. We thought lighting it with a candelabra would be cool, a really tall, like 30-foot, 10-meter candelabra. And that would be in keeping with the Diana Krall theme, because she plays a grand piano. And then we would actually have a real piano on a little stage, little octagon stage that would be about 80 centimeters high, so that if you wanted to, you could play the piano like it used to be against this wall here that you saw in the photograph earlier. But when you touch the keys, let's say you did middle C would light up in the plaza, and if you pressed a chord, it would light up, and so you could see, everyone could see you playing the piano in the plaza. So it's a little replica. Well, this is life size, and this is a big replica of the grand piano on the stage. And then this is all flush except for this stage, which we want a little higher so that when you're playing the piano, people can see you from anywhere in the plaza. In fact, this is the only place in the plaza where you can be seen from everywhere. So that's why we chose that spot. And if you needed to store the piano, if you had a Dixieland band up here or something, you could put the piano in this little storage room back here. And it's got a ramp that comes up. So if you're using a wheelchair, but you want to play the piano, you can just come up the ramp. So this is what it could look like. It's off the edge of the corner of the library, and there's the ramp coming up. It's about 80 centimeters up, and there's the piano. And at the upper floor, we would have images of Diana, either still or a video, something like that. And then, so you could play the piano, and in public times, we could lift up, these glass panels around here actually go into the upper part of the structure. And so now you have an open air piano. So if you're having a band or a pianist there, it's open air, and you have this sort of roof over the top of it. I thought that would be really, really cool. So that, we think, is in the memory of Diana Krall. And then we have the kids zone over here. These are where the boulders are, and this is it's like a book. I'll just use my book here. And so the book forms like a roof, and under the roof is where the kids' reading area would be, where you're reading stories and whatnot. And then in the ceiling, you'd have something written on the book. And I was thinking that maybe we'd put Diana Krall's biography or something there at a grade 4 reading level or something like that. So it'd be fun for the kids to look up and read about her a little bit. And then I'll go back and forth, and you can see these 8 circles come up, and those are the areas that we thought would be good for the dance steps. So the idea here is we have the refuge all around the edges, and we have the prospect all through the middle. So it's active on the edges, good natural surveillance, things to do, lots of things to do, from playing on boulders to learning dancing to reading to having a meal, to playing the piano, to watch someone play the piano. So it's lots of activity here, which would attract a lot of people. We would then put lighting up. This is catenary lighting to make it a kind of a faux ceiling over this area, to make it really kind of fun to be in with that sort of type of lighting. And then we would light up the trees, so there's lots of kind of celebration going on in the plaza. And then down where my cursor is, this is where we would put the public restrooms, and we would have, there'd be unisex public restrooms with 3 doors to 3 separate washrooms. So if you're maintaining one, the other two can still function. We like this location for them because they're in a building, so it feels like it's established, and it's near the street, and it's also proximate to the plaza, so it would serve a good public function without being necessarily a feature like it is today. We'd suggest that you've got a really cool bathroom there today that is movable, and we would suggest moving it to somewhere that doesn't have a bathroom but needs a bathroom. And then if you wanted to have a bigger stage, we would suggest putting in the utilities, so you can plug in a stage here, for example, that would play to the whole plaza. Or if you were having a giant event, you've almost got a natural amphitheater, because the up commercial, it slopes up and you could get a couple thousand people there, and up Skinner and into the plaza. So, you know, there's a few places you could place stages, and we would probably put power in other places for things that would come along that we just don't anticipate right now, but we'd like to, while we can, put in the electricity so you can have whatever sorts of function and events that you want, from a farmer's market to a big concert. So that's the idea of the plaza, and it would be kind of the centerpiece of the whole framework plan. Oh, I forgot to mention this. Oh, it's the same one. Sorry. This is the first time I've seen this presentation myself. We just put it together because we just finished these drawings. But those are those stage locations again. So that's our presentation. And in a minute, I don't know if James wants to mention the website again for input. But that shows you the framework plan, our thinking about the inclusivity, meeting all the different goals that we heard be our aspirations for inclusivity and beauty, enclosure, safer speeds, keeping the downtown connected from Victoria, the whole length of commercial, tying in Old Town with Bastion and that kind of thing. So we think that achieves your goals. And if you have any feedback, please get online and provide it in the on the website. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ian, for the presentation. It was fantastic. And yeah, again, the email address is designcommercial@nanaimo.ca. And also you can check out the webpage on the Get Involved Nanaimo website. And we look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, everybody, and have a great night.